The people of this nation have spoken. They've delivered us a clear victory, a convincing victory, a victory for we the people. We've won with the most votes ever cast on a presidential ticket in the history of the nation, 74 million. What I must admit has surprised me. Tonight, we're seeing all over this nation, all cities and all parts of the country, indeed across the world, an outpouring of joy, of hope, renewed faith in tomorrow, bring a better day. And I'm humbled by the trust and confidence you've placed in me. I pledge to be a president who seeks not to divide, but unify. Who doesn't see red states and blue states, only sees the United States. And work with all my heart, with the confidence of the whole people, to win the confidence of all of you. And for that is what America, I believe, is about. It's about people. And that's what our administration will be all about. I sought this office to restore the soul of America, to rebuild the backbone of this nation, the middle class, and to make America respected around the world again. And to unite us here at home. It's the honor of my lifetime that so many millions of Americans have voted for that vision. And now, the work of making that vision is real. It's a task, the task of our time.
Good evening. Welcome to a special edition of the International Grapevine. This is your host, Wallingford Lee. Tonight's program, we're going to talk about the divided nation that America is into because of this great election that just took place November 3rd. And we feel obligated to talk a little bit about the election, the things that have taken place, and what have you. What better person to have on our program was a veteran that's been on our program before, talking about Jaime Status, who happens to be an attorney and also a professor at NYU and another university. And we like working with him because he gets to the point and knows a lot about what's happening. Welcome to our program, Jaime.
Always a pleasure to be here with you, Lee.
Well, it's good to have you. We haven't talked in a while, and we wanted to have a feel for you of what you thought about the election. As you might recall, back in 2016, our president, Mr. Trump, ran, and one of the first things that he said back then, if he wins, it's okay, but if he loses, it's because it's rigged. And guess what? Now in 2020, a re-election, and he's back again saying basically the same thing, that if he doesn't win, it's because it's rigged, and the election just took place. What's your thought process about that?
Well, Trump is someone that always try to foresee his future in a positive way. However, he also knows what are the dangers and obstacles that he can face going towards the future. So he knew that the polls for a whole year, especially since the pandemic began, had him losing by a wide margin against Biden. So as someone that is as narcissist as he is, he needed to protect his ego by basically providing reasons before the election in case he lost that will justify a defeat. So the only thing that he had in hand was that the Democrats were going to rig the election. That was the excuse that he had 2 months before the election. And the reality came on November 3rd, and he continued using the excuse in order to protect his ego, his narcissistic ego, in a way in which he can rationalize why he lost. And the rationalization was that the other side stole the elections and they were preparing to do that. And he had been telling the people for 2 months that that's what they were going to do, and they did it. So he feels justified in saying it now because in some way he knew it before that they were going to do that, and that therefore this election is not a valid one. So he prepared the ground, he prepared the lie, and then when the reality came, he already had an excuse to protect his ego and to protect his presidency. The problem that he has is that this time he lost by, instead of 3 million votes of advantage that Hillary had, this time Biden got 2 million more. So that's it, that he won by 5 million, the popular vote. And at the end of the day, he's going to end up with more electoral colleges than Trump did 4 years ago. So he's a one-term president. He's a failure. He was a failure with COVID. He was a failure as a president. He was a failure in any policy that you can mention. People will say, and he will say, that that economy was inherited by Obama. It was the strongest economy since 2008 recession, and he inherited that. He didn't build that. And also the economies are basically controlled most of the time, almost 80%, by the business in the country, independently of the government, if the government doesn't interfere. So,
But it's important to note, though, we have to be straight up front about one thing. He had a very strong base. I mean, in the election, we saw that even though Biden beat him on the popular vote, he had over 73 million people voting for him. So it tells us that he had a strong base and people who do believe in him and back him a lot. Are you surprised by the amount of followers that he had and that strong base that he has demonstrated to have?
no, because this has always been a country that has been divided. So he got almost one half of the country. If anything, Trump helps everybody to help us to realize that this is a racist country, that at least 50% or 40%, which is a big number, just 40% is a big number in any country, that believe in discrimination, in racism, like it has always been. So he will always have that vote there, but it will never be the majority. But the fact that it's 40% of people that hate other people just because they are from another gender, or because they are gay, or because they are of another color, that's a big problem. This is a divided, polarized country that is going into a major confrontation with itself. And Trump, what he did was to crystallize that reality, and that reality is going to continue in the coming years. This is not going to stop.
So how would you overall view his presidency? Because the reality of the matter is, based on his base, which is very strong, they felt that he did an outstanding job in terms of the economy. I mean, you mentioned that he inherited. I think he did inherit a good portion of it, but he had kept it stabilized. They felt that he was a strong president.
Well, no, I look, to be honest with you, I never saw a strategy that basically he could use to take or that he implemented in order to claim that that economy was his. That economy came before he became president and continued the course. The best that you can do, if you want to give him credit, is to do nothing. Because if he had tried to do something with the economy, then he may have destroyed it. So he didn't touch it. He didn't do anything. And that's the only credit that you can give him. So it kept going. But the problems in terms of relationships, the poor, didn't get much better. The issues of healthcare didn't get better. The issues of education, if anything, they got worse. Every person that he appointed in his administration was someone who was not prepared to assume the Secretary of Education, Secretary of Health, Secretary of the Interior. Just mention it. All those people were friends of his that gave him donations in order to get positions in the administration. If anything, he was selling positions. He was selling the government. And
we'll come back to the administration. But one of the things that I think is very important, let's talk a little bit about coronavirus. We know for a fact that there are people who believe that it came from Japan. Some people feel that it came from Europe, from all over. But more importantly, it came to the United States and it really hurt us. How do you feel that our government acted on the coronavirus? You think they were surprised? You think they were ready? You think it was handled properly? What's your opinion about that?
First, pandemics have come and gone throughout history. This is nothing new in the history of humanity. And they can originate anywhere in the world. So to blame one country for having a pandemic, to originate the place where the pandemic originated, that's completely unfair. It can happen anywhere. The flu started as a pandemic too, and now is under control. The responsibility of the countries is to be prepared for things that we know happen throughout history. The office that was in charge of dealing with pandemics was decimated by Trump before the pandemic began. And after the pandemic began, he basically took all the power that CDC had, basically not doing and going against the guidelines that CDC had provided under his own administration. Something as simple as wearing a mask, he went against it. People died, hundreds of thousands of people. In Texas today, as we talk, there are 1 million people in that state that have been infected with the virus. This could have been stopped. If anything, the pandemic crystallized the negligence of the president. And that's why he went down. The negligence that he exhibited on every aspect of this society was crystallized in the pandemic. He was a problem from the beginning, and he was the worst president to have when you have one of the worst pandemics ever.
But he brought Dr. Fauci on board to help another lady which escaped my mind.
No, he didn't bring them. Those people have been there for more than 30 years doing that job. Fauci was there since the Reagan administration. He has never left. He didn't bring anyone. The only person that he brought was a moron neurologist from California who is not an expert in infectious disease. And that's who said, when you start talking about if I drink bleach, if you drink bleach, this is going to get better. Those were the examples. If you use light and put it inside your body through your ears, through your nose, it might get rid of the virus. So certain light that he thought that was going to do that. The other alternative that the neurologist gave him, who's not an expert in this area, said, just let it be. He was talking about the herd immunity, that eventually the virus was going to die. Well, a lot of people die, but not the virus.
With a tremendous, whether it's ultraviolet or just very powerful light. And I think you said that hasn't been checked, but you're going to test it. And then I said, supposing you brought the light inside the body, which you can do either through the skin or in some other way. And I think you said you're going to test that too. Sounds interesting. Right, and then I see the disinfectant, where it knocks it out in a minute, 1 minute. And is there a way we can do something like that by injection inside or almost a cleaning? Because you see it gets on the lungs and it does a tremendous number on the lungs. So it'd be interesting to check that. So that you're going to have to use medical doctors with. But it sounds interesting to me. So we'll see. But the whole concept of the light, the way it kills it in 1 minute, that's pretty powerful.
Because following that example, it was terrible. This is the worst president in the history of the United States, and one of the worst histories, and one of the worst presidents, I'm sorry, in the history of the 21st century. The 21st century had 80 more years to go. In 80 more years, he's going to be on top of the list. And I say that, I'm not saying that he's going to be on top of the list, because there are 80 more years to create more morons like Trump.
I feel with the coronavirus, I think it caught us by surprise. I think it did. And I think that we weren't sure how to react to it. But I think with all of this taking place, he was more concerned about the economy. He didn't want the country to fall down. He felt that the virus was hurting everything. And I think that he was trying to balance both things, that it probably kind of got out of hands on him.
Well, I tell you, if he wanted to help the economy, what he needed to do was very simple: handle the pandemic. That's how he fixed that's how he could have helped the economy. Deal with the pandemic. Everybody knew it. It wasn't a rocket science that you needed to resolve this problem. Deal with the pandemic. Yes, the pandemic is a big challenge, but you had the experts there with him, telling him what to do, and he decided not to do it. How can you say that drinking bleach is going to fix it? How can you say that not wearing masks? Everybody in the White House is in the hospital now because of him. He was having gatherings in which he didn't request it or require people to wear masks. His own administration is in the freaking hospital, Lee. This guy is dangerous. Thank God that this election came. And look, I'm not a fan of Biden either. But thank God, because what we went through during the last 4 years is one of the worst experiences in the history of this country.
Are you basing that strictly on the coronavirus, or the other issues you're basing it on?
No, if you listen to what I have been saying since I started, I didn't touch the coronavirus until you mentioned the coronavirus. And I gave you a list of things that he has messed up in this country. Everything from race relations to religious issues. You know, he have made this country worse in the way that people deal with each other. So this administration is, people, when we heard where I live here in East Harlem that he lost the election, it was around 11:30. Everybody threw themselves on the streets. This is a poor neighborhood. It is East Harlem. Everybody was on the streets. The cars, the noises, it was a big celebration, and that was throughout the United States. This guy now, even now, he has an opportunity to fix things a little bit. He hasn't conceded.
Well, I don't think he has much time right now, because he has probably about 73 or 74 days to go before he gives up the presidency, if he does give it up.
Well,
My
wait.
understanding was that he still feel that he won the
Well,
election.
he can feel whatever he wants. All he has to do is count. If he knows how to count, which I give him that, maybe he doesn't count well. He knows that he lost by 5 million votes, and the electoral colleges very clearly. He can feel whatever. He knows he lost. There is no other way around it, Lee. This guy lost the election, and the right thing to do to keep the country united, at least show some decency and concede like every other president who has lost an election has done since 1890, when Adams lost the election to Jefferson. Adams hated Jefferson. Jefferson hated Adams. He lost the election. It was the first election that a president lost. And immediately Adams left, went back to Massachusetts, and Jefferson came. There was a peaceful transition and cordial transition, even when they hated each other. And it has happened like that throughout the history of the United States. And this guy to this day doesn't have the decency. He's not even letting prime ministers and presidents of other countries make contact with the new president, which has always been allowed before they take office, because it's part of the transition. So when they start in January 20, they can start governing, running, not trying to find out what the hell happened in this administration that we don't know. That's why transitions are created. It's the most decent thing that he can do. He cannot even do that. I mean, there is no way to defend this guy, Lee. I'm sorry.
Well, when we get back here in International Grapevine, we'll continue talking about the divided country or divided nation that it is. A lot of things that you said at the end make a lot of sense, not recognizing that the other party won and not giving them the courtesy to be invited to the White House. We'll be right back in International Grapevine as we continue talking about the great political division that we have in this nation here and all the other type of division that is affecting us right now. We'll be right back on an International Grapevine. And we're back here in International Grapevine talking about the divided nation that we have right now. The election just finished, and we found out that Mr. Biden won. However, the current administration have not accepted that. They're going around suing a lot of different cities. They're doing all type of different counts. But based on what we heard on NBC, CBS, CNN, obviously Biden is the winner. And in today's program, we have an attorney on board, a gentleman that we have had the pleasure of working with many times, Jaime Estates, that have expressed it, the way he feel about the division and all the issues that are taking place. Obviously, it's important and imperative because of democracy that this nation need to be healed and healed fast. We're all American. The true Americans are the Indians, and we know what happened to them. Every one of us came from somewhere, our ancestors. But again, this is America, and as such, we have to guide, protect our name, and protect the Constitution and the democracy of this country. It's important. It's part of what we are. Jaime, you expressed a lot of important things in the first 15 minutes, and let's talk a little bit about the election. Why is it at this stage we still have Arizona that hasn't been finished counted? We have Georgia, we don't have a report on that. We have Nevada, we don't have a report on that. And it's our understanding that a series of attorneys or whoever the current administration have engaged, they're going from town to town and reviewing all kind of things. My understanding is that Pennsylvania came out clear. There's no fraud. I think also Wisconsin came out clear. There's no fraud. Where do you think we're going with all these things?
Well, I think that Arizona just a couple of minutes ago, they basically, it's clear that Biden won Arizona. And I think it was adjudicated already. So I think that was minutes before we started this recording. And even if he didn't have Arizona, even if he didn't have Georgia, which he's going to win. There is no doubt. If anything, the difference between Biden and Trump, it keeps increasing. I don't know what they haven't called it yet, but there is no reason to doubt that he's going to win it. So
I think Biden have 279 and he has 217 right now.
Yes, that's a big distance. That in terms of electoral colleges, you see, once you have 270, you have more than half of the electoral colleges. That means that the other one is never going to catch you.
Okay. Okay.
So and the one who has 217, he has even 17 more over the half. So the election has been decided. And then you will have to add Georgia, and you will have to add Arizona that just came in. He may be in 237, 240 by now, which makes no difference. What he needed was exactly 270. So,
but why he has not accepted that he lost? What is the hang-up?
Because look, I'm sorry to say it this way, but I think that sometimes you have to be straight and honest. There is something wrong with Trump. I think that there is a level of mental illness in the president of the United States. I think that mental illness has existed for a long time. And I think that because his money, I think because his charisma, whatever he has left, and the people around him that depended on him, he has been able to survive the last 4 years. But the way he behaves, look, I remember, when I realized that this guy was gone, was first when he said that bleach was good to kill the pandemic, among other things. But before that, I remember that there was a hurricane going to Georgia, I think it was. And he drew himself with a magic marker because he was saying things that were contradicted by the Weather Bureau. So he wanted to know more than the Weather Bureau. So he took a map from the Weather Bureau and he created a circle like a child. I did things like that when I was in first grade, when I had homework and I wanted to show my mother that I got an A. I may have changed the F and I put another leg so it looked like an A. I did that like as a child, but I was a child, a bad child. I wasn't dumb, but I was a child. How can the president of the United States do the same thing I did in first grade? Thinking that the rest of the people, and put it on TV, that the rest of the people, adults, millions of adults in this country were going to buy that crap. Sorry to say it that way, but that's when I said this guy has mental issues. He is not aware of reality. I have a BA in psychology, a master's in social work. I'm a lawyer, and I think I know a little bit of psychology, that I don't think that I have to have a session with him to know when there is something mentally wrong with this guy.
So what's wrong with the Republican Party? Why they have not stood up? Why they have not come to his rescue and sit down and have a powerful meeting with him? Among the democracy situation is at stake here. Why they have not sat down and have a meeting with him?
Because they are still getting eggs from that hen. They're still benefiting from him. McConnell, who's maybe one of the biggest political, I'm not going to say that, one of the worst people in the Senate, in the history of the Senate of the United States. He has a problem. Right now, the Republicans lead the Senate by one senator. There are two senators in Georgia that are going to be going in a runoff. He needs to win one of those two in order for him to continue in control of the Senate, because he needs Trump. He's not going to go against Trump. He's done with Trump. He just needs to have the leadership. And still, after he gets that, he doesn't care about the presidency of the United States, because he didn't have it with Trump. He's not going to have it with Biden. All he cares about is the speakership of the Senate. So that's a good example. Under McConnell, there are another 49 senators that need those 2 extra votes, at least one of them, so they can have majority. So they're playing the game. It's an egg. You know, Woody Allen one day Woody Allen is not the best example, but he made a joke one time that, you know, his brother took a chicken, went to the therapist and told the therapist that he was a chicken. And then the therapist spoke to Woody and he said, you know, the brother thinks that he's a chicken. I said, well, don't fix him. I said, why not? He said, because I need the eggs. You know, so that's the Republican Party. I know he's crazy, but I need the eggs.
So let's get out to the nitty-gritty. How do we fix this division that is happening in this nation? That's one question I wanted to ask you. And the second would be, what is your feeling about Black Lives Matter? Two questions in one.
They're doing a great job. Someone has to stand up. They have been doing a great job for a long time. The African American community, the Black community, the Latino community, the Black and brown communities have been under abuse since this country was created. It hasn't stopped. Why is it that the statistics are so different between policemen killing innocent people who happen to be of color and not killing white people who commit crimes? Why is it that they cannot use the strategies and the training before they shoot someone? But
do you think the police department need more training, or is racist?
No,
what do you think?
Look, I think that they have training. The training needs to continue, but I think that they are a symptom of this country's division. The majority of the cops, especially in New York and the big urban areas, are white. They are not all racist, but there is a big number of them that are racist. And that racism is condoned by the police department. The problem with the defuncting the police, is perhaps that's not the right word. It's a redistribution of the budget in those cities, in which the budget of the police should be cut in order to use it in other areas. And I think that's what the progressives are trying to explain to the people. It's not defuncting, taking all the money from the police. It's rearranging the budget, redistributing the budget.
But they are afraid if you distribute the budget, it's going to cut into the police department.
No, wait. Let me explain. The redistribution, the budget is using those monies and putting in other areas that can complement the work that the police does. So that way you will have more mental health people, more social workers. You will have more primary care centers where people can be treated. You can have more drug addiction programs. That's what is needed, instead of putting billions and billions and billions of dollars to the police. And when they keep shooting people of color and the problem is not being resolved, they need help. The police need help, but it's not adding more policemen. Most countries in the world don't even have half. There is not one country in the world that have half the police that the city of New York has. Not one country, not London, not Paris, not even in Brazil, that they have another Trump there, have so many cops, because they're using other methods in order to deal with the public. It's not only repression. This country is based on violence and repression, and that violence and that repression is intrinsic in the way the police department works. And
what would it take to change that violence?
Reorganize the freaking budget. Reorganize, put the money where you can help the police in other areas, like those that I mentioned before. And there are more that people smarter than me have suggested, like it has been done in other countries. Stop the mass incarceration and all these stupid laws that people think that everything, every problem, every social problem can be ended with a war on drugs, with a war on crime, with a war on this. And what you do is that you pump more money in that war into institutions that are basically creating those social illness.
We've got approximately about 2 or 3 minutes. What would it mean if Biden takes the White House? What does it mean going forward? We know that he seems to be a very honest guy, very decent, and there's a feeling among certain people that he's weak. I would like to think that he's knowledgeable. I'd like to think that somewhere down the road, if he won, they voted for him because they saw something in him. So if he takes the White House, where do we go from here?
Look, first, people are going to breathe a little bit better in January 20. Just exhale. I am not a big fan of Biden, but the hurricane that we had during the last 4 years, it gives you a relief that is going to, people are going to be able to breathe. Communication is going to be better. I think that he's going to try to unite, but that will depend on the policies. I don't think that his policies are going to be that great, but anything is better than Trump. That's the way I see it. That's the way that a lot of people see it.
But keep in mind that he's taking the country in a mess. He's taking the country in a mess.
Yes, it's taking the country in a mess. And you're going to have someone that is going to at least look at the problems in a serious, mature, adult way. That is good to start. That's not Trump, okay? Because the one who put it in a mess was Trump. The other thing is that this man has been in government. He understands policies. He understands how to govern. He knows people in the House of Representatives. He knows people in the Senate. He understands how things work. No one has more experience in the United States right now, Republican or Democrat, than Biden. Still, I think that there are other people who could do better than him in terms of policies of my preference. Okay, but that's me. Who the hell am I? But objectively, he will do much better for this country than what Trump was doing, and things will be managed. For example, all the mistakes that he made, that Trump made, like the environmental issues, many of them, he will not advance Biden, those issues, but at least he will put them back. For example, the treaty with Paris in terms of the environmental agreement, the worldwide agreement, he will return to that, not like Trump did that abandoned. The millions of acres in the North Alaska that he gave to the oil companies, all that is coming back. There are good things. The good things is putting the country back at least where it was, because right now it's in a precipice. So what Biden is going to do is going to take the country 2, 3, 4, 5 steps back from the precipice. Still, you're going to be close to it. He can do better if he has more progressive policies, but at least we are going to be able to think about things and negotiate things, which we cannot do right now. Ali, Trump was a disaster, and he will be in history as the worst president in the history of the United States, unless another bigger moron comes again.
On that note, Jaime, I want to take this opportunity on behalf of the family of the Grapevine to thank you so much for being our special guest. I hope if we can do a part 2 down the road, because this is just a start because of what's going on with the election. And we like some of the ideas that you brought on board. And we do know that we have a serious problem and they need to be fixed.
We can do part 2, part 3. I'm going to be pissed for a long time. Don't worry, bring me back.
Again, this is Wallingford Lee saying good night for the International Grapevine, and hope that you had the opportunity to listen to this program and that you got something out of it. We thank you for your viewing, and we hope to see you next week at the same time at the same place. Thank you and good night.
and to all those who supported us. I'm proud of the campaign we built and ran. I'm proud of the coalition we put together, the broadest and most diverse coalition in history. Democrats, Republicans, independents, progressives, moderates, conservatives, young, old, urban, suburban, rural, gay, straight, transgender, white, Latino, Asian, Native American. I mean it, especially those moments, and especially those moments when this campaign was at its lowest ebb. The African American community stood up again for me. You've always had my back, and I'll have yours. I said at the outset, I wanted to represent this campaign to represent and look like America. We've done that. Now that's what I want the administration to look like and act like. For all those of you who voted for President Trump, I understand the disappointment tonight. I've lost a couple times myself, but now let's give each other a chance. It's time to put away the harsh rhetoric, lower the temperature, see each other again, listen to each other again. And to make progress, we have to stop treating our opponents as our enemies. They are not our enemies. They are Americans. They're Americans. The Bible tells us, to everything there is a season, a time to build, a time to reap and a time to sow, and a time to heal. This is the time to heal in America.